Now let's talk the methods that tend to especially do well at collecting more quantitative data. Many can still be used to collect qualitative data, but they're especially good at those more numerical differences and structured answers that lend well to that. So, big idea is for these slides, same as always. What is it slide? It's the most important slide and is for everyone to know. The later ones are more for grounding the methods and helping you actually do them. In this slide deck, we are going to concentrate on surveys. Surveys are a tool where we ask people questions about facts, opinions, and attitudes. They're mostly close-ended with intent to quantify. So unlike interviews where you want them to go on and give a really long, detailed, however they tend to see it or feel it, this is where you want a more structured response so you can start adding them up. There are several different types of surveys. The choice of the right survey largely depends on the research objectives and your constraints, such as, of course, our friends' time and money. Big idea is surveys are very good for learning facts, opinions, and attitudes. And this can be very useful given perceived value is a major component to consumer processes. Even if two companies offer the same level of benefits, it's what customers perceive or process that matters. And this goes for organizational customers as well. So why bother? Well, it's very good at generating lots of quantitative data very quickly. And you can learn what people think, especially if the sample is good. It can be used to explain both what and how much or to what extent. And in fact, because you're asking, you can learn about intentions, perceptions, and things that you cannot readily observe. So observations, you can see what they're doing. This is the other hand where you kind of are asking, what are they thinking? What are the motivations? But surveys aren't perfect. Only as good as people can or are willing to answer. So perceptions and intentions only. They will not capture behavior aside from what are they willing to answer. You can only get what they recall or are willing to state their behavior is. So you need to have a good idea what or how you should ask. And we'll be going over that. So depending on the survey, another issue is I'm sure many of you have done a paper and pencil survey. You can't change the questions very easily. It's not like an interview where you go, oh, this doesn't apply, or oh, what about this? This one you can't change on the fly as easily. And another issue is it can be difficult to get participants to respond, whether returning it, completing survey, or filling it out entirely. So data may not be good due to response biases or non-responsivity in that regard. And finally, another issue is they can be expensive, so you gotta know what you're doing. So in sum, surveys are super good at finding different forms of data, and with the right samples, can be used to generalize to larger populations. However, they're only as good as what the participant is able and willing to give. So there are lots of different types of surveys. In a moment, I'll show you the books table, and you'll have it in your book as well. And they have lots of different versions depending on what customers you're trying to access and what you want to access in terms of information. So for example, a customer that is busy is not likely to want to do a long telephone survey during dinner. On the other hand, an internet survey can be done at their discretion. So sampling is usually representative sampling so that you can generalize what you learn to a larger population. So you collect data until you gain the desired level of certainty. So generally speaking, when using a representative sample, the larger the sample compared to the population, the more you can generalize to that larger population. That is, the more you can say it's likely the rest of the population has the response breakdown you're seeing in your sample. That's, of course, assuming you're not just picking and choosing willy-nilly the sample, that you're actually using a representative sample where every person has equal chance of being in that sample. Questions need to be more close-ended so that you can actually aggregate them. However, sometimes you do want some open, non-directive questions that better check back on things. So in sum, surveys are very good at collecting quantifiable data for saying how much, where, and to what extent. However, you have got to make sure you find the right people and that the questions can be understood in the same way. I'll be showing you examples how you can mess up survey questions. A big part of surveys today is, of course, online surveys. They hold many similarities to offline surveys. They're similar in what data you can best collect, and the pros and cons are largely the same. But there are some differences. So, big issue, or rather opportunity, is personalized questions. So many of you have probably taken a Qualtrics survey or others, and computers can be programmed, such as the subject or participant can get personalized questions, such as if this person is a woman and they check that off, or if this person answers a question a certain way, now give them this next set, or show them this next possible advertisement. So you can customize it. You don't have to worry about, well, they print the same thing. You can actually see it and change it. Another is convenience. Allowing for internet surveys also means more people might be more likely to respond because they can do it at their convenience, and format allows anonymity. As you can imagine, it has a similar issue with mailed surveys, but you still have to get them to finish it and open it. Easy data entry. This system that you use to administer the survey will give you the results. Effectively, you don't have to transcribe the responses because your participants already did that when they entered the response that yes, no, click. It's already in your system. Finally, you can assess different populations. As you know yourselves, the online course format allows you to take a class you might not normally be able to take because of, say, location, scheduling, all sorts of reasons. Online surveys share this benefit of being able to access populations one might not normally be able to meet. This has helped with the data boom because it's easier to reach those certain populations. Now, for resources, it's very recommended you have access to Qualtrics. And not just access, free access through your Laverne portal or through the library. So, okay, maybe not this link, but in your My Laverne portal, you will have a Qualtrics link that you can use. Also, there's Google Surveys and SurveyMonkey and others you can use as well. Now, here's that table comparing different types of surveys: telephone, mail, online, and fax, individual interview, and multi-intercepts. And you can imagine you can split these up further. But that this gives you a big overview of things like how some are more costly, you can change the answers or the questions, some easier. You gotta be careful that the interviewer can accidentally bias the answers versus others where there's no interviewer. The online survey just looks the same. So let's get a quick little check your knowledge. So a researcher wants to study 1,000 consumers and needs information about a lot of personal and sensitive issues. Which of the following would be the best way to gather this information? Remember to read the question carefully. What is it do you need to know about? How might the research method influence how a person may answer? Will the method get you what you need? So, let's get to the answer. What did you say? So, best answer is probably A, mail survey. So mail surveys are particularly useful when you intend to contact a large number of consumers. In the above question, the researcher would like to contact 1,000 consumers and wants to get personal and sensitive issues. So personal sensitive issues, if they're face to face with someone, they may not really want to share. So that mail survey gives them that anonymity that they might want, that feeling like, oh, no one's watching me. Focus groups, hard to do 1,000 customers. These get struck out because of personal sensitive issues. And experiments aren't going to give you that information. They will give you what one factor does, but not if you're looking for a range of issues. So mail survey is our best response. So a big consideration when we talk surveys is, why might a person give false information? So take a moment and try to think of some ideas. You probably remember and thought of this in earlier sections. So why do you think a person might give false information? So we can think of two different reasons probably. Deliberately false or unconsciously false. So here are some ideas just to remember when you're structuring your survey. So deliberately false information. You'll get customers that want to strongly make a statement or feel strongly about a question. They may be trolling you, or they're just giving you because they just want to do it because they're troublemakers. They might be busy or tired and they're just like, close enough. They might be prestige seeking or want to make a good impression on you, so they'll tell you something that, heads what they're like. And there might be a courtesy bias. I'm just answering because it's very nice to do. Then there's lots of reasons they may unconsciously give misinformation. So big ideas, they may have no idea what you're asking. So they are trying their best, but they just might not be able to answer the question. They might not understand it. There's also a split, perhaps, between what they think they do and what they actually do. And again, similar to this, they may just give their best guess. They're like, I think it's this, and they may honestly think that. Note these issues apply to surveys, ethnography, interviews, anytime you're questioning. And depending on your project, some of these are more likely than others. So in sum, surveys are very good at finding different forms of data with the right samples. However, you're only, again, as good as what the participant is able and willing to give. So now in this next section, we're going to go over some surveys in person. So good survey questions should be clear, unambiguous, and capture what you want to know. So no leading questions and no questions ask two things at the same time. There will be more examples next slide. So let's go over real quick. Open-ended questions, that means your respondents, say your customers or suppliers, put it in any answer they want. So tell me about the last time you had chocolate. So this is the blank text box. These are pretty hard to quantify, so they're usually meant more as ways to check back on previous questions or find new ideas without proper interviews. Close-ended questions. This is where there are a set of predetermined responses. So have you eaten chocolate in the last week? Yes or no. Scaled response questions are also a matter of predetermined responses, but they have a scale. So from a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you like chocolate? The latter two are easy to quantify, so these closed-ended and scaled responses. But you have to make sure you actually have good responses, that your survey participants understand the questions in the same way. Your book has a wonderful list of different forms for Wendy, so I highly recommend you see what they do. So here's an example to describe both how you have to be wary of secondary data and in crafting your own survey questions. So I want to answer the question, what is the percentage of American adults who currently eat fast food, for my own research? So what do you think? What do you say? Okay, so I want to know in case someone ever asked me when I was doing my research. So I decided to go to two trusty polls, Gallup and Pew. I thought, okay, what I'll do to get a number of people who eat fast food is going to be 100% minus the percentage of people who said never. That should give us a relative rule of thumb. Well, from Pew, their question was how often in an average week do you eat a meal from a fast food restaurant like McDonald's or Burger King? So what answer would you give? Go ahead and write that down if you'd like, or remember in your head. Now look at this question from Gallup. What answer would you give now? How often, if ever, Do you eat at fast food restaurants, including drive-through, takeout, and sitting down in the restaurant? So, every day, several times per week, once per week, 1 to 2 times per month, a few times per year, or never? Does it sound similar to the last answer you give, where they went from never, less than weekly, once per week, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 or more times per week? Now let's see them side by side. Notice how they're a bit different. What do you think happened? So when I got the response for never, from Pew I got 33% never eat fast food versus 4% never eat fast food. So you can imagine the primary reason that we see these large range of never had fast food is the way they structured the question and the words they use. So look at the ways each question and the responses can produce very different answers. So how they conceptualize fast food. First, some of you probably thought of that. So in this one, they prime you to think, oh, fast food as McDonald's and Burger King. Versus, say, in this one, any type of takeout, drive-through place. Means, effectively, different examples are generated and evoked. And I'm sure probably notice these images here, where I showed the major brands, probably also tip the scale. So yet another good example how easily one can encourage certain types of responses. And in fact, often when I did interviews, people often count at restaurants. The industry normally considers something called fast casual, like Panera and Chipotle. So we often need to take into account that they think fast food in terms of all quick service restaurants, so QSRs. QSRs. What else? Well, some of you might have thought of occasions mentioned in each question. So this one, you eat a meal versus any food consumption. So do you have any food that you ate? So when you eat a meal versus any type, meal, snacks, anything. Next, who are you talking about? They are at least consistent about it's you who eats. But it's no good if they were interested in, say, visits. Such as how when I did observations, I used to see a lot of parents just sitting there while the kid was eating in his or her soccer clothes or something else. Finally, many of you probably noticed the ordering of the responses mattered as well as the content. So for Pew, never was first, and it went up from there. So from never to 6 or more times a week. In Gallup, never was the last option. The response ordering may influence how you think of your own consumption. In sum, the way you word and structure the questions matter. Let's go for some more crafting questions. There are also questions that you can use for in-depth interviews, ethnography as well. But you gotta remember they should be paired with more open-ended questions and prompts to get the conversation going if you're using these types of questions for interviews. So, have you stopped shoplifting? Go ahead and give me an answer. Have you stopped shoplifting? Well, doesn't allow much flexibility, does it? If the answer is no, but I've never actually, or yes, there's no real good answer for never. So yes, oh, I've stopped shoplifting, cool. No, I have not stopped shoplifting, ooh. So you can imagine how our questions are not usually as stark as this, but we can still leave our participants with responses that may not fit their situation. They might either leave it blank or write any question, or rather any answer, which can skew our results. So actually, this is an interesting tool in general, is assuming someone does something can help increase their likelihood of saying they actually do it. So when had you started insert action? It basically presumes someone has done something, and it may be useful if you want to encourage people to talk about something they may be embarrassed to talk about, because it may imply it's a little more normal in the sense that it's assumed that they may have done it. On the other hand, like the question above, the have you stopped shoplifting, It can lead to bad data because people may embellish to give you the answers they think you want. How about another question? Do you smoke? Well, good start. However, it may not get at what you want if you want only a specific type of smoking. So smoke what? Cigarettes? E-cigs? Vaping? Marijuana? At all? Someone could go, oh yeah, I smoke a nice pack of beef ribs every weekend. Nice pack of beef ribs. Maybe not what you wanted, huh? So it's also a bit vague even if you mean any kind of smoking. More questions may be needed depending on what you want to know. For example, a person may not know if they count what they do as smoking. A participant who only smokes during emergencies a few times a year may decide this does not include them. If you were counting out someone who smokes at any point during the year, you might be out of luck. Let's talk more crafting questions examples. So on a scale from 1 to 5, how concerned are you with the over-urbanization of Riverside? So what would you answer? What might be troublesome about this question? Or maybe not troublesome. Many of you may have noticed, wait a minute, it's a potentially leading question. Notice how the wording is already very strong. Well, of course, most people would be worried about excess anything, the over of something anything, but they really think of it as such. You can see that a lot during political polling. You can make anyone or anything seem good or terrible if you make the question bad enough. So on an ethical note, I do not know the extent that this is an actual promotional tactic, but I know it gets around that political surveys are as much a communication tool to potential constituents and fellow voters as much as a data collection tool. As you can imagine, this may be good for some politicians, but it makes it harder for other political survey groups that are legitimately just trying to figure out polling answers. So participants may not be interested in helping if they think you don't even care about their opinion because of past advertisers masquerading as researchers. So just a little bit of ethics note. So now another question. From 1 to 5, do you like the quality and taste of the dish? So this is an example where you are asking two things at once, what we call a double-barreled question. And so what's wrong with this? It is double-barreled where quality and taste may be two separate dimensions. So for example, quality doesn't mean good taste. They may also care about something else when determining quality, such as certain ingredients. So the quality may be excellent in terms of ingredients, everything looks beautiful, every individual item tastes great, but overall blending, the taste is terrible. So sometimes you gotta split those things apart. Here is another question, and we're going to wrap up with this one. So how you must choose your responses and interpret responses with care. So the question that was asked was, would you recommend Panera Bread to a friend? Rate from 1 to 10, 1 the lowest, and 10 the highest. As you can see, the question has a very good start. It measures the extent you will do something, your likelihood. The numbers are clearly labeled. You can tell what 1 means versus 10. This is a story that I learned while interviewing. The person I was talking to explained that the manager of Panera came to his table and told him and his friends that each would get a cookie if they completed a survey. And so they did. They all took out their smartphones, clickety-click, and completed it right there. He got this question. He answered 7. The results were immediately visible to the restaurant, and they apparently had a nice dashboard. He was a bit embarrassed when soon after she returned to ask, who gave the 7? It apparently lowered the ratings. What does it mean to be rated a 7? Well, he explained to her and later to me that a 7 was actually a very high number, given he normally would not wish to talk about fast food with other people. It was a fair answer. What does it mean to be a 7? Notably, scales are very vague in this way. So the point of the survey and a representative sample is to make up for individual differences to find that average. So yet, this still may not actually say what a 5 actually means, even if that is the average, but effectively that's why we have a representative sample. So it's a wash that some people are more likely to rate lower, some people are always more likely to rate higher. But you got to be careful that, so for Panera, 7 was actually very good in this case. So some additional considerations to think of when crafting questions. Well, different surveys let you do different things. Some will let you easily change the questions, probe, or clarify confusing questions. However, you always have to balance out the idea of surveys if you're trying to be able to generalize to a larger population. You want to generalize to a larger population. You want to be able to say, I know this about this group of people. If you're not asking all the same questions in the same way, you're not going to get clean data where you can do that. So bottom line, what's your research goal? Gotta look at what you intend to do. Are you discovering new gaps? Learning about new things? Affirming patterns or practices? Overall rating or positive sentiment or rating compared with another brand? To confirm or test a specific relation? Maybe just to see what puzzle pieces, ideas, stories, and meanings are out there. This will determine what research method is right for you, whether a survey, more closed-ended and generalizability, or say a depth interview, open-ended, and just learning what's out there. So here's the book's examples of issues when wording questions, and you'll notice a lot of them are similar to what we talked about in the last one, but using Wendy's. And here to wrap up are some past examples of how your classmates have used surveys. And so keep in mind, a lot of these were done in conjunction with, say, observations and interviews. And so there's plenty of ideas you can use that I hope you'll try out and take the time to see how you can do these. And they don't always have to be about before. A lot of them can be things like, hey, what surveyed how they felt about the product after you did with it? How happy were they with what they had? So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me through email or the Q&A forum. And if you like, I'd be happy to see more of your research methods if you're planning to do something and give your thoughts. Or, of course, you can always ask your classmates or share your ideas. And I hope you're having a great day or evening and that you have found something interesting to implement for yourself. And this is your instructor encouraging you to run with these ideas.